yeah, democracy is just for the hiding, but also for the illusory of selection, the illusory of choice, right? And that's how like liberalism and the status quo is kept. So like you don't necessarily have to like Biden, but you don't like Trump, right? Like, and that's how most people are, because Trump just becomes further and further to the right. And if it's not Trump, then it's somebody else further to the right. But like the status quo is upheld by, you're not necessarily a supporter of the status quo, but at least it's not the fascists, right? At least I'm not a supporter of the fascists, but I'm not necessarily, and like Trudeau does this, Biden does this, Macron does this. It's the status quo, lesser evil strategy. Yeah, but this is crazy, and I would consider myself an expert in this. It's like I call it neoliberal kayfabe, like wrestling, like because we know if you look at in the 2022, the last midterms, the DNC invested in far right candidates because they knew that the far right would be easier to beat than the more moderate Republicans, right? This is exactly what Macron did with Le Pen to defeat the left. You externalize the far right candidate. This is a thing called I'm getting something mixed up, but yes, you externalize the far right, you externalize the hierarchy, you externalize the far right, you externalize the enemy so that you position yourself as the lesser evil. And this is like literally like a classic way of like storytelling where you don't necessarily need to make yourself the protagonist, but you make clear who the antagonist is, right? And the way in which like our entire system is oriented is that there's always this like sway between these two things, between like the establishment liberal center, or like the moderate right, like what would a good example be? In Canada, it's Doug Ford. Like Doug Ford is like a liberal conservative, right? Where they don't do like social politics. They're just like fucking Ronald Reagan. Like they're just purely neoconservative. Like they will like you if you don't make, like if you're disabled you should get a job type mentality. Like, but they don't do, like they're not transphobic, and if they are, they keep it to themselves. That type of a Republican, that type of conservative. Those two sides, right? The centrist liberal or the moderate conservative go back and forth. And the way that they stay going back and forth is by externalizing either the far left in a more like a conservative oriented region, by externalizing the far left because they know that that's how it gets people to vote, and then the opposite in the other side. And that's how the center keeps getting narrower and the outside keeps getting further. And yeah. I can't I'm trying to think of like an example, but yeah, like the like the neoliberal conservative, where they are like, they're not they don't do the culture war, but they're capitalist oriented, and they are like, they don't want social welfare, those type of people. because those type of people seem way more reasonable than fucking like Trump, right? Or Le Pen, or like literal, like the fascist in Italy, right? Like the far right. So, and this is like this political tactic where both sides are doing this, where because they're able to, the more moderate right is able to galvanize their support by externalizing the left, and the more moderate center liberals are able to galvanize their support by externalizing the far right. And all they're doing is like driving these people further and further to more. This is the thing too, is like you're creating this thing where both sides are becoming class conscious, except one side is becoming class conscious like towards a collective and is going to like get towards the left, right? Even if they're going to be social democratic, and then the other side is getting oriented towards the far right. So those people are being driven towards literal fascism. So like this is very this is not sustainable, right? Like we're headed for a serious crisis because both sides know that that's how they're able to keep their power, is by externalizing the opposition. And so we're just getting this crazy polarized situation. And that, because of that, it makes it very easily manipulated. And that's why, the Russia was able to manipulate. And also like they have to be able to do these types of manipulations now. And that's why you see like with January 6th is they're doing now these like honeypots where they have like a sting up, like a dragnet happening within, right? So that if something actually does happen and they know and they're stopping it. But they do that by like having a thing happening, by like, I don't know how to describe this, but like if you look at the lead up to January 6th, there was many people who were doing throughout the US in the lead up to like during COVID who were doing like they were trying to like externalize threats against government officials and stuff like that. And almost all of them were run by cops or military. And this is like, they were setting up this like dragnet. They were setting up like it's a honeypot where they were externalizing all of these bad actors because they needed them for political reasons. And they used to do this to like make people think that they were like terrorists, like that they were, like jihad, right? But now they don't need to do that because now they just say everyone's an extremist, either to the left or the right. So, yes, the illusion of choice.